Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles YouTube channel. We're coming off of the cusp of our European campaign. Yesterday didn't go as we had foreseen, unfortunately. We'll be talking about that, of course, in our after show. However, we are going to talk about our next European opponents, and they perhaps also imagined their start to the Europa League stages a little bit differently. They drew 3-3 against Viktoria Pilsen yesterday in Frankfurt. So our opponents, as just said, are Eintracht Frankfurt. And here to talk to us about it is the English Bundesliga commentator Kevin Hatchard, who is a recurring guest, of course. Kevin, thank you for joining us once again.
Great to be back with you.
So, Kevin, did you have a chance to even watch them play yesterday? Because I know you just you're soldiering on, and you just had some surgery on your teeth. So I know you might not have been in the mood to watch a lot of football last night.
No, I did, and it will have felt like tooth surgery for those Eintracht fans in the last few minutes because they had the game won.
Yeah,
it was a good enough performance to win the game. They were 3-1 up. Had scored a couple of brilliant goals in that. The opener from Ugo Ekitike, typical of him. Great control, great finish. So they were looking good in that regard. Junior Abimbe, who I like very much, comes on, scores a really well-taken goal just after coming on. And then Rasmus Christensen made it 3-1. And you're thinking at that stage, okay, going into the final quarter of the game, it's over. Eintracht should see this through. They're in a good position. And then somehow, two really bad goals, to be honest. And I kind of lay both of them at the feet of Niels Nkunku, the left-back, who is a good player, but he's better going forward than he is defensively. And I think we saw that last night because the first goal, he's asleep at the back post, and it's a good finish. And the equalising goal is a disaster because it's a high ball in the box. And Nkunku, instead of heading it clear, heads it up in the air. That puts off the young goalkeeper, Kawa Santos, who really should deal with it. Doesn't get very far, gets stuck in traffic, and it gets poked in. And so they'll look back on that and think that that's a real opportunity missed to get their campaign started with a win.
Yeah, and of course now on Thursday they have to go to Istanbul, and they'll probably have thoughts going into that game with 3 points. If we can get a point here, that would be nice. But now things change around a little bit. They have a point from their first home game, and now their mindset going into the game against Beşiktaş on Thursday might be even a little bit changed. What can you tell us about their new coach, Dino Toppmöller? He is, I believe, making his debut as a senior coach at the age of 43. What has he changed around compared to Frankfurt last season?
Well, I mean, Toppmöller's been in charge since the start of last season, so he came in with it being, as you quite rightly say, his first job as a head coach. And I think what we saw in the opening months of the season was a team that was difficult to beat and a team that was starting to put it together in attack. I think he got a little bit lucky in the second half of the campaign. They rather fell away, in truth. And because none of the teams around them were really taking advantage, and the top five in the league were kind of over the hills and far away, they kind of got away with it, really. They had as I say, fell away a bit, had a really disappointing DFB Pokal exit against Saarbrücken, who were a third division team. And so that was a mark against him. And it's difficult because he delivered a top six finish, so that's great, qualified for Europe. But I think there was a feeling that they weren't quite clicking in the way that they should have been. The caveat would be that Marcus Krösche, the sporting director, has put together quite a young squad. And their idea is to bring in these young talents, develop them, and they know eventually they'll sell them on. So it's always going to be a tough test to gel all those new players and those young talents together. And this season, I think they've looked a lot more cohesive. I actually thought they played really well in the first half of the game against Borussia Dortmund on the opening weekend. Commentated on that game. I thought they looked good. And then they were undone in the final quarter of the game by Jamie Gittins, who scored a brilliant double. And even then, really, at 0-0, had a big chance that they should have taken that would have put them 1-0 up. And then they went on a run of wins and looked good, scoring goals. And this is a setback against Pilsenia. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, you already alluded to it. A great start to the season for them. 9 out of 12 potential 12 points. Just that first misstep on match day 1 against Dortmund. How have they looked in away games? Because you just said against Dortmund they actually could have taken the lead at 0-0. I believe they played away at Gladbach. Is that right? And won.
Well, they won away at Wolfsburg.
At Wolfsburg, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a great result. Yeah, I mean, what they have is they have game changers. And they have, if you look at the front two, for example, or what is effectively a front two, Omar Marmoush has been developing well for a while now. Egyptian international striker, really good in tight spaces, lovely, skillful player, and is scoring goals. And that was always the question with him. It was always about, could he find that consistency in front of goal? Could he get those numbers up? And he's starting to do that. So that's really important. Ugo Ekitike is a brilliant player. And they've really kind of benefited from the fact that they are a good place to go for young players to develop. There's a clear pathway in that regard. But I think as well with him, they kind of stayed on his case. They wanted to sign him long before they did. He made the move from Reims to PSG. We know that didn't work out in terms of game time for him. That's not a massive surprise. It was always going to be difficult for a young striker trying to make his name at PSG. And so, I mean, the irony is that actually now he'd probably get a lot more games with the way that they've gone. But he's a wonderful player. Amazing skill, slaloming runs, good in tight spaces, good finisher. Scored an excellent opener against Pilsenia on Thursday night, and he's got everything you would need to be a top striker. So they're very, very excited about him.
Yeah, a goal and an assist, I think, yesterday. And then, of course, Marmoush scored 4 already in the 4 Bundesliga appearances this season. He scored 16 last season, so he is percentually upping that production for sure. Those are young, exciting players that Beşiktaş will undoubtedly have to watch out for. The most famous name, I think, in the selection that I saw was Mario Götze. How important is his role still within this Frankfurt side?
Yeah, I mean, he's very important in terms of his experience, in terms of his know-how. He's played in a deeper role, and I think that's been really interesting to see, because what he's always had is that game intelligence and that ability to pick out a pass from deep. We've seen that. And I think that's been really interesting to see his development. He speaks really well in interviews. I think he has taken on a leadership role. And I think that's been a really interesting step forward for him. Obviously, we know him as the guy who scored the winner in the World Cup final 10 years ago, scarily. And, he was a really good attacking midfielder. Now, not as quick as he was, not as agile as he was, but the brain is still very, very good.
Yeah, I think he kind of grew into that leadership role already at PSV. I saw him there, and he was becoming a different player almost, and reinvented himself really. And then, of course, made that way back to the Bundesliga. Of course, 2 years ago, I think it is. We're getting old, but Oliver Glasner was the coach in charge of Frankfurt, if that's correct, 2 years ago, and they reached the Europa League final against current Beşiktaş coach Giovanni van Bronckhorst's then Rangers side. Won that on penalties. They also reached the DFB Pokal final under Glasner, I believe. So back then, Frankfurt were kind of known as a cup side. But you already talked about it a little bit. They went out disappointingly last season in the DFB Pokal. Do you think that under Toppmöller they can also turn into that sort of a side that is strong in cup competitions?
Well, that's the challenge, because he's got to compete in the league, but he's also got to go quite deep in the Pokal, quite deep in the Europa League, because, as you say, the bar for Eintracht has been raised in recent years. When you think that They got to the semi-finals of the Europa League a few years ago under Adi Hütter. They won the DFB Pokal under Niko Kovac before he left to join Bayern. They got to the final the year before that. Got to another DFB Pokal final under Glasner and won the Europa League. So those expectations have gone up. That's brought in prize money. It's brought in a higher quality of player. But with that comes expectation. So Toppmöller knows he has to deliver. And he knows all about that. I mean, his father was a very accomplished coach, Klaus Toppmöller. He got Leverkusen to the final of the Champions League, you might remember.
2001, right?
Yeah.
With
the Zidane volley.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were a hell of a team.
They were, yeah. And Zé Roberto.
Yeah. So he knows the job. Everybody I speak to who's worked with Dino is hugely complimentary about him. Guys who've worked on coaching staffs with him, players who've worked with him, they all tell me that he's a really, really smart football guy, and they're confident that in the long term he's going to be a really successful coach. And you know, he's worked with Nagelsmann, he's worked at Bayern, he understands the elite standards required, and I think that will set him in good stead.
Of course, one of the big departures over the summer, or mainly the biggest departure in terms of incoming money at least, was Willian Pacho, who went to Paris Saint-Germain for 40 million. But they also brought in 8 new players, under which, of course, was young Turkish international Can Uzun, who was in the second Bundesliga last season with Nürnberg, I believe. Scored a lot of goals there in the second Bundesliga. Has he been fitted into the team yet, or is he still kind of finding his footing?
Yeah, it's going to take a while, because obviously he's a forward player, and you look at the forward players who we've already talked about, and they're in sensational form at the moment. So it's going to take a while. I like him very much. I like the attitude. He was asked whether he was excited about being called the next Jamal Musiala, and he said, I don't want to be the next Jamal Musiala, I want to be the first Can Uzun. So I like that attitude. As you say, did well for Nürnberg, and I think given the amount of games that they've got, he's going to have a role to play going forward.
What type of lineup do Frankfurt really play? Because I've read, and you've also just said, that they really kind of play with 2 strikers, which isn't super common anymore in today's day and age. Because most teams play a traditional 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, but they seem to play a little bit differently than the cookie cutter teams.
They do a little. I mean, the thing to remember about Marmoush is that he's a very kind of versatile player. So what you'll often find with him is he'll move into those wider areas. So you'll see that a lot. And they've got options to do that, to have those kind of, to have that 4-2-3-1, if you like, and have Ekitike as the main man in attack. But it can very easily then become a front 2 when Marmoush gets into those areas. And with Ekitike as well, he's the kind of guy that will wander. He'll drop a bit deeper sometimes and get involved in some of the build-up play as well. I think that will improve as he gets older. And it's the power in midfield I find really interesting, because you've got some really, really adept runners from midfield. So Elias Skiri makes up the ground. He's very much an energy guy. Box to box these days, can score goals. It's not what he's mainly known for, but he's added that to his game. And then the one they're really excited about is Hugo Larsson, who scored against Gladbach recently, and is, for a player of his very, very young age, plays with great maturity, never shirks a challenge. Really interesting player.
Yeah. So you've already elaborated a little bit on their strengths, their key players. If Beşiktaş are hoping to get points on Thursday, what will they have to exploit? What are the weaknesses that Frankfurt still have right now that you think the Black Eagles could be able to get something out of?
Well, first of all, the goalkeeper, Carlos Santos, who I like, and I know the goalkeeping scout at Frankfurt, and he absolutely loves him. Speaks very highly of him. but he's inexperienced, and we saw that with the goal that they conceded right at the end of that game against Pilsenia. So there's a big issue there. So I think, if Kevin Trapp isn't fit and Carlos Santos has to play, then that's a concern. And then you look at just them defensively in general. I think you can get at them. I think they make mistakes. I think you can exploit gaps in that rear guard. Artur Teat, I think, is a good signing. I like him, but it's going to take a while for them to gel. So you've got good individual defenders, Tuta, Robin Koch, Artur Teat, but I think sometimes they get caught out with their organisation. And so I think that's not a team that, for me, is going to keep many clean sheets in the near future. So that's where Beşiktaş have to play, really, on the front foot, trying to exploit those gaps.
Yeah. Not like yesterday, sitting back and trying to counter-attack, but it was a very bad tactical decision from Giovanni van Bronckhorst, I thought. I hope he learned this lesson, and on Thursday he'll play to the team's strengths and just play their own game, and then hopefully Beşiktaş can get some points against Frankfurt, which are, of course, a very tough opponent. Kevin, thank you very much for giving us your insights on Frankfurt, and we have a hard game, I think, to look forward to on Thursday.
Pleasure.
And thank you, of course, for listening to this episode of the Black Eagles YouTube show. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you think about this game and what your expectations are. And are you going to the game? Let us know as well. Bye bye. See you soon.